Good morning, this is Jim Williams with the Hurricane City Tropical Update for October 19th around 9:30 a.m. Here's the radar shot from Hurricane Gonzalo hitting Bermuda on October 17th in the evening as the system was moving off to the northeast at around 16 miles per hour with winds of 110 miles per hour. The system caused moderate to extensive damage on the island, but it could have been a lot worse because there were some very high wind gusts in Bermuda, up to 140 miles an hour in some of the higher elevations. That'll all be sorted out by the National Hurricane Center in the final report as to how high the elevations were, where the instruments were located and calibrated, etc. But basically this was a strong Category 2 hurricane. Caused some roof damage, a lot of trees down, power outages, but overall not catastrophic, and the island should get back on its feet in a few weeks and be back to normal. Let's go back a little bit, and here's the European model. This is going back to October 12th, and you know, the European model has had basically the best track record going back, you know, several years of long-range model projections of tropical systems, having them coming pretty close to their target forecast. Now, going back to October 12th, this was when Gonzalo was nothing more than an invest east of the Lesser Antilles, and the European model predicted this was going to go east of Bermuda. In fact, I mentioned that in the last tropical update I did when it was down in there, when it was invest 90L, and the indications were this was going to hit the northern Leeward Islands and then make a hard right-hand turn and go east of Bermuda. And this is just a lesson in why you can't look at even though the European model is probably the best out there for long range, you can't look at a 6-day forecast and go, okay, we got to be worried, because it did have this passing well east of Bermuda. If this track had verified, they would have not had any hurricane force winds on that island at all. But the model was wrong, and its system ended up coming right over the island. So let's go back a little bit and look at the entire track of this system and see what areas were affected. First of all, Antigua was the first island affected by Tropical Storm Gonzalo at that time, and this was on October 13th around 10 a.m. We had 65-mile-per-hour winds in Antigua, and some, you know, moderate damage, trees down and whatnot, but nothing major. But that will be a direct hit from a tropical storm in the Hurricane City database for Antigua. And then next in line was St. Martin. The island of St. Martin took a direct hit from Hurricane Gonzalo on October 13th in the evening hours as an 80-mile-per-hour hurricane. The eye went right over St. Martin, and one guy was killed there, and there was quite a bit of damage on the island as the system was moving off to the northwest, making the turn. And the threat here was lessening for Puerto Rico at the time, which thought they were going to have to deal with this thing, but it ended up going northeast of Puerto Rico, and here we are. The closest point of approach to the Virgin Islands was the island of St. John, 62 nautical miles to the northeast, so this would be considered a brush for the island of St. John, but not for St. Thomas, and that's why the database at Hurricane City is so precise to the locations that were brushed or hit versus not hit at all. And St. Thomas would be outside of that ring there of tropical storm force winds, and of course Puerto Rico really was far away from the center, over 100 miles to the northeast of San Juan, Puerto Rico, so that will not be a brush at all for Puerto Rico. And of course then the system hit Bermuda, and this was a direct hit impact. Almost the dead center of the eye was right over Bermuda in the late hours of October 17th, and the winds were 110 miles an hour at this time, and it was moving off to the northeast. Here is the IR shot of Hurricane Gonzalo when it was over Bermuda, and you can see that there's not a real lot of intense thunderstorms around the center. Basically mainly oranges, a little bit of reds there just north of, or just pinwheeling into Bermuda, where they got some of the highest winds right before the eye came in, and then a lot of people say the worst damage was after the eye came in. So let's take a close look at the eye wall of the hurricane as it made landfall in Bermuda, and you can see Bermuda circled there. And this band right in here, this yellow, bright yellow band to the west of the center of circulation, is what moved in from the west in Bermuda and caused those wind gusts of 115, 130 miles an hour, and did probably quite a bit of damage. But you know, this island was hit earlier by Tropical Storm Faye, like a week earlier, and Faye weakened a lot of the, took out a lot of the weak vegetation and took care of a lot of the landscaping, so to speak. So when Gonzalo came in there wasn't a whole heck of a lot of foliage to break up and cause damage, but there was, again, quite a bit of roof damage simply from the high winds that were right near borderline major hurricane strength. And by the way, this has happened to Bermuda before where they've had double hits. In fact, I think my memory serves me right, looking at the database, back in 1957, I believe, 2 hurricanes hit Bermuda a couple weeks apart. So it's not unusual. Well, it is unusual for them to get hit twice in one year, but it's happened about 5 or 6 times since 1871. So it's not completely unheard of for Bermuda to take a hit. Now, we were live on the Hurricane Warning Show during Hurricane Gonzalo hitting Bermuda. We had live webcams up on the screen. We had radars. We had the Hurricane WatchNet going. Bill Phillips and myself, we were talking throughout the night. I joined Bill around 6 p.m. maybe 5 o'clock in the evening, and we went right on through about 11 p.m. as the backside of the eye wall was moving in, and Bill took it throughout the night. And we recorded everything, the most interesting moments of this hurricane landfall, and it will be edited down and available at Hurricane City over the next several days. And this is what fuels Hurricane City. We accept donations of $20, and what we do is every time a hurricane makes landfall anywhere in the basin, we try to record it and give bits and pieces of what the internet had to offer, and then put it up on the site for people to see at a later viewing date, especially people that were involved in the hurricane and could not watch it on the internet because their power was out. They can go back and kind of relive what the internet version of things were. And then, of course, the system moved north after hitting Bermuda, and the forecast from the National Hurricane Center was this to pass well over 100 miles to the southeast of Newfoundland. But now it turns out this morning the system passed about 60 miles away from St. John's. So this will be a brush by a hurricane. At that time, winds were about 80 miles an hour this morning, so it's long gone from the area now. But they were brushed by, tropical storm force winds as the system passed to the southeast early this morning. So a brush for St. John's. So now what's coming down the pipeline in the tropics? Let's take a look at the Gulf of Mexico satellite image, and we have a system down in the Bay of Campeche that the National Hurricane Center is keeping a close eye on. And a lot of the long-range models are indicating that something's going to develop here and move generally off to the east-northeast towards the state of Florida. So let me just kind of give you an idea what some of the models are indicating. The European model, which again is probably the most relied on by a lot of forecasters, has this kind of coming towards Florida and then kind of drifting north here a little bit and meandering around up here in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. So it's remained to be seen what's going to happen with the European model. But again, the European, you saw what happened with Bermuda. The European, it could be all the way down here somewhere, or it could be meandering out in here, or maybe get stretched right over South Florida and involved in a cold front. It's a little bit too early to tell yet with the European model. Now, some of the other models are indicating in fact, the GFS model takes this as a frontal type system right over South Florida, and then moving out into the north of the Bahamas. And this could end up affecting Bermuda as well down the road. So this would be 3 times Bermuda gets hit in a season. I think that's only happened once. And we'll see if this develops once it gets past Florida. But this is the GFS right over South Florida. And the Canadian and a couple of other models want to take whatever develops here and linger it down here in the northwestern Caribbean Sea and kind of develop it a little bit. So this is something, Jake's basically anybody in this area right here needs to pay close attention to what's happening in the Bay of Campeche, because we're going out maybe 5-6 days. We could have a tropical storm. The next named storm on the list is Hannah, and this could affect Florida, Cuba, or the northwest, the panhandle of Florida, the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. We'll have to see what happens with the models, but that's the thinking right now. Anyway, I'll be back with another update video in the event that we do have Hannah and there are watches and warnings up. We'll see where this all goes. That's it for now. Thank you again for visiting Hurricane City.